Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of The Comeback Kid. I am your host, Ben Friedel, and alongside me, as always, are Nate Wiggins and Matt Hendrickson. How's it going, you guys?
I'm good. I had a pretty good weekend. Got a chance to meet Demba Ba yesterday at the USD-UCLA soccer match, so that was pretty cool.
I finally got around to finishing FIFA 17, The Journey.
Yes.
It was a good weekend.
There you go. Lots of hours spent with Alex Hunter.
Lots of hours with Hunter.
Yes, and then you were saying that you started FIFA 18, The Journey, and you were a little upset.
Why do I have to go play in the MLS?
Yeah, I mean...
Why?
Well, as Nate likes to say, MLS is a springboard for success around the world, right, Nate?
We're not even 1 minute into the show, and the MLS slander has already started. Come on, you guys.
Oh, man. So, on that amazing note, we're going to kind of just jump right into what this show is about. So, every Monday at 9 a.m., we come to you live via USD Radio, and we hope to talk about sports and stories that may not get enough attention on major sports networks. But this includes soccer, sometimes MLS. We'll work on it, Nate. It's the U.S. national team has got us all in kind of a sour mood with not qualifying for the World Cup.
4.5 years.
4.5 years, yes, that is correct, Nate, until we will see the United States in a World Cup match, until Christian Pulisic sees a World Cup match. And that's assuming we even qualify next time. I mean, if this past round of qualifying has proven anything, it is to expect the unexpected. But also, we hope to talk about NHL, which we have done extensively on our past few episodes, as well as other sports. And we are also open to suggestions, so if you guys want to text us, tweet us, do whatever, you know who we are. Let us know if there's anything specifically in the world of sports that you would like us to talk about, and we will do just that. But most importantly, we prioritize our own interests and the sports we want to talk about as well, and we will take your values and your opinions into consideration as well. So, let's get right into it, guys. So, the World Series is set. The matchup is set. It is going to be the upstart Houston Astros against the Los Angeles Dodgers. This was a matchup that many predicted in, May and June. These were two of the best teams just in the middle of the season, and it's funny because we like to say that we saw this coming, but there was definitely ups and downs for both teams in the road to get here, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the matchup that we were all expecting and maybe even hoping for at the All-Star break, I would say. I mean, that was when the Dodgers were in the middle of their impressive 43-7, 50-game span. And, I mean, that was, one for the history books. And then all of a sudden, they weren't looking so good, and I think they went on like a 14-game losing streak. They were super streaky, and I thought, maybe the Dodgers' downfall was something you could credit to the Diamondbacks' resurgence, but what were you thinking here? Because I was super wrong. I was thinking, I don't know, maybe Diamondbacks, Cleveland, and I went 0 for 2.
That was our pick, and they both did not last long at all.
I went 0 for 2.
Yep, 0 for 2. But on one side of the coin, we have the Dodgers, who manhandled the defending World Series champion Chicago Cubs. Clayton Kershaw, Nate, do you think he finally proved himself with his Game 5 performance that he is the guy you want to go through in a must-win game in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think, can we finally put to rest this idea that Clayton Kershaw is a playoff choker? Because, I mean, yeah, last year he didn't have it, but this year, I mean, he was tremendous.
Yeah, he really, really was great. Matt, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of Kershaw's playoff performance is going to be tied to some terrible Cardinals NLCS games.
Yes, my Cardinals, yeah.
So maybe the fact that the Cardinals weren't in it meant that he was allowed to have a good playoff. So I don't know. I think it was only a matter of time that the best pitcher in baseball was going to be the best pitcher in playoff baseball too.
Yes, definitely. And if we look at other main points of Game 5, we saw Kike Hernandez, kind of a platoon outfielder for the duration of his career, hit a clutch grand slam to put Game 5 and the series out of reach for the Chicago Cubs. And the Cubs, in some ways, had the Dodgers right where they wanted them, 3-1 down. We saw it last year against Cleveland. They stormed back from 3-1 down to beat the Cleveland Indians last year, but the Dodgers were like, no, we're not going to let you come back from that, and they cut the cord right there on the Cubs season. This was partially to do, and we've discussed this specific player at length. Kenta Maeda out of the bullpen has been electric. As a starting pitcher, we see him cruising low 90s, 91, 92, cute little like slider, and just nibbling the corners. He's been coming out of the bullpen in the 8th inning, throwing 95, 96, painting, and just overpowering guys. What have you seen in Kenta Maeda, Nate, that has really impressed you?
Well, actually, fun fact, I actually saw Kenta Maeda's first ever MLB start. It was against the San Diego Padres.
Oh, yes.
And he actually homered in that game.
Really?
In his first
Wow.
his first MLB start. But I've been really impressed with Maeda coming out of the bullpen. And I think, we've discussed it at length on this podcast, starters coming out of the bullpen. And I'm not the biggest fan of it because, we saw what happened in Game 2 with John Lackey coming out of the bullpen and giving up the walk-off home run. But I've said it before on this podcast, you have to win or lose with your best. And, right now, Kenta Maeda is the best option that they have in the 8th inning to be the bridge from the starting pitching to get to Kenley Jansen. That 8th inning guy is super important. If you don't have a good 8th inning guy, look at the Red Sox. So the fact that they have a guy who can come out of the bullpen and, like you said, be throwing gas, be pumping 97-mile-per-hour fastballs behind guys painting the corner, that goes a long way.
If you had to take one of these pitchers in the 8th inning, who would you take, Maeda or Lackey?
Maeda, what
Yeah.
kind of question is that?
I think Nate answered his own. I think Nate answered that question with his previous response. But that actually leads us to our next point, because you mentioned the Cubs and them attempting to bring their kind of lower order starting pitchers into the game to be these kind of mega relievers, such as John Lackey. And we saw the Dodgers do that effectively with Kenta Maeda. And that begs the question, what were the Cubs lacking this year that they had last year? Because it was like the Wade Davis show and everyone else. Wade Davis was putting the team on his back pretty much the entire season. He was their only all-star as well. What were they missing this year that they didn't have last year?
So first off, I hope the listeners know that I was kidding about Lackey and lacking Lackey. Anyways, I really don't know. I don't have an answer for you on that one. I think they retained most of the lineup, and I remember going into this year that Brett Anderson was the only person on the Cubs roster who did not have a World Series ring. So I'm not sure what it was. It has to be some kind of mentality maybe that they were lacking, or just the sophomore slump curse of trying to defend a championship, or maybe just some kind of management style in the clubhouse. I don't know.
You know what I think they were missing? They were missing Dexter Fowler.
Yes.
He was so important to that team when they won the World Series. And all season, they could not find a consistent leadoff hitter. They had Kyle Schwarber batting in the leadoff for a while. They had Anthony Rizzo batting in the... They had John Jay batting in the leadoff for a while. They had Anthony Rizzo batting leadoff for a while. They could never find a consistent guy like they had with Dexter Fowler. And because they never had a really consistent leadoff guy, they weren't obviously getting as many guys on base. And they just couldn't score runs the way they could in the past.
I think the Cubs thought they had a leadoff hitter in Anthony Rizzo when he started out super hot. I think the first 2 games that he led off, he had like a leadoff home run. But obviously that success didn't sustain. So you know what? You're right, Nate. I think a lot of it came from their leadoff position.
In my own personal opinion, I think a lot of what the Cubs were lacking this year was starting pitching depth. Last year we saw the Cubs use 6 starting pitchers the entire season in order to win out the National League Central and to win the World Series. That, in an age where 50% of pitchers on average get hurt at least some point during the year, is a recipe for disaster, especially when you have an aging starting core like John Lester, who had a pretty bad year this year. I had him on my fantasy team. He wasn't doing me any favors. John Lackey took a significant step back. I mean, he's like 70 years old at this point. Like, he's very old, and they were relying on guys like Mike Montgomery, who isn't necessarily used to being a starting pitcher throughout the year, to come in and eat up more innings than he's accustomed to. And when you're a World Series defending World Series champion and you have to rely on Mike Montgomery to kind of carry your team to success, starting pitching wise. It's not a formula for success. We did see in the latter half of the season the revitalization of Jake Arrieta. I think he gained himself a lot of free agent dollars in the latter half of this year because he really did show signs of the Cy Young winning Jake Arrieta that we saw a few years ago. And so while there were a few bright spots for the Cubs this year, I believe we all agreed they were one of the weaker teams going into this year's playoffs. They had the least amount of wins of any playoff team other than the Rockies and the Twins, of any division champion. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And so when you're running into a juggernaut like the Dodgers, it's going to prove to be very difficult to win out that series, and that's exactly what it was. So Dodgers in the World Series, first World Series since 1988, and they will be met by the Houston Astros. What a series, guys. What a American League Championship series that was. The home team for every single game that was played won each game, and some say that baseball may not have the same home field advantage as other sports, such as soccer, such as basketball. Home field advantages, or home court advantage, rather, is very important, especially in the NBA Finals. But we saw home teams really home fan bases really coming behind their teams. The Yankees were hungry for a deep playoff push because they're accustomed to that in the past, and they, we're lacking some successful playoff years, and so this is the deepest the Yankees have gone in a long time. And the Astros, especially after Hurricane Harvey, have just been hungry for something. The city of Houston's been hungry for something to rally behind, and the Astros have really just given them that. So, guys, if you were to pick one player in this series that really stood out to you, who would that be?
Easy. Justin Verlander. I mean, I said last week that he's my pick for the playoff MVP. I found out that's not a thing. But he did get the ALCS MVP, and I think it was well-deserved.
Yeah, I think you have to go with Verlander. I mean, he said before Game 6 that, this is the start that they brought me here to start. I came to Houston to start games like this, and I mean he was absolutely tremendous, and they needed that from him, especially how terrible their bullpen has been, particularly during this series. They needed a great start from Justin Verlander in Game 6, and he absolutely delivered.
He really did. He is in many ways revitalized his magnificent career down in Houston because he's back to playing competitive baseball with a fan base that's hungry, a fan base that is really excited about him being there. I feel like in Detroit, people were just accustomed to Justin Verlander taking the mound every fifth day, and it didn't have the hype. He didn't have the hype that he deserved, and now in Houston, he is definitely getting the love that he deserves in that ace role as a part of a fantastic rotation, which we saw on full display in Game 7. Without Charlie Morton and Lance McCullers, the Yankees definitely, I think, would be going to the World Series. We saw two pitchers used in Game 7 by the Houston Astros. Charlie Morton started this game. He is their number 5 starter, has kind of been a journeyman, bounced around a little bit, had some arm problems when he was in Pittsburgh, and Houston took quite risky chance on him, I thought, when they signed him to a 3-year deal. And you see Charlie Morton got a 3-year deal. Like, what is going on? And we saw in Game 7 the other night exactly why he received that 3-year deal. He's nasty. He's throwing 97 with crazy bite and movement. And he's Matt, what year was Charlie Morton born?
1983.
1983. So Matt knows most athletes' birth years, fun fact. So 1983, and so that would make him how old, Matt?
Turning 34. I think he's in November.
Yeah, oh my God. So as a 34-year-old, still throwing it up there at 97, 98 miles an hour is very impressive. And Charlie Morton threw 5 shutout innings to start Game 7, completely manhandling the New York Yankees, and then we saw your boy, Matt, Lance McCullers, come in with his filthy curveball, just dominating the Yankees and closing the game out.
My boy?
Your boy, yes. You have no affiliation with Lance McCullers. You looked at me, so I felt there was a connection there. However, this was so big for the Astros, not just because it brought them to the World Series, but Nate, we were talking about this. The bullpen, the Astros bullpen has been in rough shape this postseason.
First off, Matt, that is very creepy that you know so many athletes' birth years and birth months. But yeah, I mean, like I said, a few minutes ago, their bullpen has been absolutely atrocious. And so to go into to play a Game 7, only having to use 2 pitchers, and to be able to first off not have to even worry about putting in someone from the bullpen and then blowing it, but also the fact that now your bullpen is fresh going into the World Series. I mean, that is huge. That cannot be, the importance of having a fresh bullpen cannot be overstated enough.
Yeah, definitely. And they didn't have to utilize a Justin Verlander in Game 7, and so we could potentially see him toeing the rubber in Game 1 against Clayton Kershaw potentially, because they've had a lot of days off. So yeah, Clayton Kershaw and Justin Verlander, arguably 2 of the best pitchers of our generation, going toe to toe in Game 1 of the World Series. There's nothing more exciting than that. We're all going to be watching. It's going to be a fantastic World Series. I was disappointed when Cleveland and Arizona came out, but I'm very satisfied with this World Series matchup. And if the Yankees had made it, may have not even watched the World Series. Yankees, Dodgers, not much appeal there. Houston, LA, a lot more appeal for me at least. So that brings us to our predictions, guys. What are you guys thinking for Dodgers, Astros? How will this series play out?
I got the Dodgers in 7. What about you, Matt?
Dodgers, Aaron Rodgers, Steve Rogers, whatever. Astros in 6.
What?
Oh my gosh, that was good. That was good. That was really good. I have the Astros in 7. I think this is going to be a very competitive series. I don't think the Dodgers have played a team of the Astros' ability so far this postseason. They went through a Nationals team which has a curse put upon them, the Washington D.C. sports playoff curse, and the Cubs really didn't show up. So this is going to be a real test for the Dodgers, and I think the Astros will have another very difficult team to play against in the Dodgers, as was the Yankees to them as well. So my prediction, Houston in 7. I really, for the city of Houston and all they've been through with Hurricane Harvey, I think it would be such a boost for the city of Houston and for the Houston Astros to get their first World Series title in franchise history. I think it would just be fantastic for the city, fantastic not only for the city, but for the players that have been there through the hard times as well. You have guys like Jose Altuve, who is a perennial MVP candidate every single year, and he was there on those 100 lost teams, and so this is going to be a great series to watch. So coming up next on The Comeback Kid, we recap a busy week in soccer. The international break ended, so we are back to European soccer. Champions League was going on, Premier League was going on. It was a very busy week, and we will be right back to recap all of it. Stay tuned, you guys. Welcome back to The Comeback Kid, everyone. So it was a busy week in the world of soccer. So we had our international breaks come to a close, and so that means the return of club soccer, specifically on the continent of Europe. And to start out, we're going to focus on the results from the Premier League this past weekend, Nate. We saw a Manchester United team over the weekend that has completely steamrolled through all competition in the Premier League so far, and then they played tiny itty-bitty Huddersfield Town, and they can't get the result. What did you see in this game?
I saw a Manchester United team that looked uninterested. And keep in mind they're playing without one of their best players, Paul Pogba, but still, with the quality and the strength of a side like Manchester United,
and the dollar amount that backs that team,
the fact that you can't go to Huddersfield and win, I mean, it's frankly just ridiculous that Manchester United can't go to Huddersfield Town and win. And congrats to German-American David Wagner, manager of Huddersfield Town. Who knows, maybe potential manager of the U.S. men's national team? We'll see.
I mean, we can't just think that this is Huddersfield's first ever win. I mean, they made it to the Premier League and they deserved it. Yeah. Maybe coming against Man U, it might be a little bit of a surprise, but I can imagine you feel pretty happy right now, Ben.
Yes, so what Matt is referring to is a very deep inside joke. So back in FIFA 17, I managed to take Huddersfield Town in my manager career mode to the Premier League and created a Champions League titan out of Huddersfield Town. So some would say maybe I'm an oracle in this sense. Maybe it's actually happening in real life. Huddersfield Town is just going to pull a Leicester City and take the world by storm. Probably not, everyone. It's complete exaggeration. But anyways, we saw some other results this weekend, Nate. Chelsea-Watford. Chelsea took care of business this weekend against Watford. It looked a little shaky. They had a late goal by Azpilicueta. Let's just call him Dave. That is a Chelsea chant, by the way, that they chant at the Stamford Bridge. Azpilicueta, we'll just call you Dave. Because, that name, man, it's just crazy. So, what did you see in that game, Nate?
Well, this was a battle between a top 4 side and a side that has been struggling a little bit. That top 4 side being Watford, and the side that had been struggling was Chelsea. And I felt like this was a match that Chelsea needed. And yeah, it was shaky for a while. They got down 2-1 at half, or just at the start of the second half. And I was watching it. I was up at 4:30 in the morning watching it, and I was thinking, ooh, is this a disaster waiting to happen for Chelsea? But then, mama, there goes that man, Michy Batshuayi, came on, scored 2 goals, and was the hero. He was the hero for Chelsea.
And it's also nice to see Azpilicueta or Dave or whatever, Astros in 6. It's nice to see. It's nice to see Dave score on the other team's net for once. I think he has just as many goals for Chelsea as he does against his own team.
Own goals? Wow,
yeah.
that is a interesting fact. Matt, what year was Azpilicueta born?
I don't even know his name. I don't know his name. I'm sorry.
You're gonna have to look that up after the show. So, Chelsea took care of business. In my personal opinion, that was a big match, not only just for Chelsea, but for Antonio Conte's tenure at Chelsea. If he had lost to Watford, and on this trend that they're going, there's some tension in the Chelsea clubhouse right now as well. Hot take, I think this could very well be Antonio Conte's last year as Chelsea manager. This is a team that goes through managers like bags of chips and just completely, if they don't produce a title-winning team, they're out. Like to see that over in North London for Arsenal. Arsene Wenger hasn't won a title in a while, so maybe institute some of the same kind of mentality, Stan Kroenke. But Arsenal side, Chelsea got the result, and they needed the result that they needed.
Yeah. I'll be shocked if Antonio Conte survives the summer. Really, no matter what Chelsea does this season. I mean, if they go on to win the Champions League, that could be different. But yeah, there's certainly some infighting going on in Chelsea. Antonio Conte was not happy with what the Chelsea board did during the transfer window, because now that Alberto Morata got injured, you're kind of seeing that Chelsea doesn't have a ton of depth at the striker position. But let it be known that Antonio Conte was the man who sent a text to Diego Costa saying, "I don't want you on my team anymore." So, I don't think that you can blame. You can put all the blame on the board when you send a text to your number 1 striker saying, "I don't want you anymore."
Azpilicueta was born in 1989.
Thank you for clearing that up, Matt. So, moving on, there was a lot of high-scoring results in the Premier League this year. This past weekend, Man City took care of Burnley handily. I think that's something that we all expected. So, Man City got the crucial result to even further themselves from Manchester United, as Manchester United lost over the weekend as well.
And Aguero's back.
Yes, Sergio Aguero's back. Manchester City still scoring. They're 5 points clear of Manchester United and Tottenham. And right now, I think that they're clearly the favorites in the Premier League, but I think that Manchester City is a clear contender to win the Champions League. And we'll get to their Champions League match against Napoli in a little bit, but I think they're looking like a top 5 side in Europe right now, and I think that Kevin De Bruyne is looking like a top 5 player in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So where's Dortmund in the Champions League?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a sec. You mentioned Tottenham a little earlier. Tottenham took care of Liverpool quite handily by a score of 4-1 over the weekend, and this comes in tandem with Tottenham's recent Champions League successes that they've had, and they are pretty solidly at the top of the table this season. And this begs the question: is Tottenham the team that's going to be challenging Manchester City for the title this year?
Yeah, right now I think that Tottenham is the second best team in the Premier League. I think that they're definitely better than Chelsea, definitely better than Manchester United. But Tottenham beat Liverpool 4-1 this past Sunday. And just touching on Liverpool for a second, defensively, Liverpool, they are absolutely terrible. And it's not like tactics or anything. It's just they make some of the stupidest defensive mistakes I have ever seen from Premier League defenders. This is the kind of stuff that wouldn't even work in MLS. And so, I think that some serious questions need to be asked of Jurgen Klopp as to be okay, you see that these guys are struggling defensively, yet during the transfer window, you didn't go out. You needed a center back. You didn't go out and get a center back. So
they almost had one in Virgil van Dijk, but that transfer fell through.
There's Liverpool some serious defensive issues, and I think particularly if they finish outside of the top 4, then some serious questions need to be asked of Jurgen Klopp.
Yes, definitely.
And looking at Tottenham, they're definitely the second best team in the Premier League right now. I think that there's a pretty big gap between them and Manchester United.
Mm-hmm. And I think it would be fair to say there's now a pretty considerable gap between Tottenham and their crosstown rivals, Arsenal. Tottenham and Arsenal, one of the fiercest rivalries in the Premier League. Arsenal took care of business this weekend against Everton, although a very weak Everton side that many had a lot higher expectations for this season. It was a score of 5-2. Arsenal beat Everton away at the Merseyside, and it brought the end of Ronald Koeman's tenure as manager of Everton with this 5-2 loss to Arsenal.
Yeah, I think that it was time to pull the plug. Clearly something wasn't working with Everton, and we can talk about how they spent, I think, somewhere around $200 million in the transfer window, and people thought, they spent all this money, clearly they're clearly gonna be a top 6 contender. But yeah, you can spend all the money in the world, but when you lose a guy who scored 27 goals for you last year, it doesn't matter who you bring in. They did not bring in a replacement for Lukaku, and so, you can spend all this money, but if you lose your best player, and don't replace him, it's really all moot.
Lukaku, Mbappe, it doesn't matter. Astros in 6.
All right, Matt, I think we're going to have to cut you off with that. So, speaking of struggling teams, let's move over to the Bundesliga. Your boys at Borussia Dortmund are struggling a bit, Nate.
Yeah, much like Liverpool, Dortmund has some serious defensive issues. Had a 2-0 lead this weekend at Eintracht Frankfurt, and they say that 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in soccer. And after a penalty and some pretty atrocious defending, Dortmund lost. They dropped points for the first time this season. No, sorry, dropped points for the second time this season. And that coupled with the result last week, losing 3-2 at home to Leipzig, things are not looking well. Things are not looking well in Dortmund for Dortmund. Bayern Munich was able to win this weekend at Hamburg, so Dortmund and Bayern are now tied on points, which as a Dortmund fan that's not really a comforting feeling, because I feel like Bayern has not played their best soccer of the year yet, and so I figured that they're eventually going to pick things up, and I figured that while Bayern was struggling, Dortmund needed to win every single match in order to get at least some of a gap between Dortmund and Bayern, and now that gap is gone. So Dortmund, they have got to step it up domestically if they want to have any chance of winning the title.
I mean, it seems like not even 2 weeks ago we were talking about how it was Dortmund's league to lose. So what's happened since then?
Well, the two best players this year for Dortmund have been Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Christian Pulisic. And both of them had very rough international breaks, with both their countries failing to qualify for the World Cup. And ever since the international break, both of them have had looks to me like some serious confidence issues. I think that the international break was very rough on both of them, and it's really affected their club performance. Christian Pulisic had a pretty good chance this week, and he missed a pretty. I wouldn't call it an easy chance, but it was a chance that I think a few weeks ago a very confident Christian Pulisic makes. And Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, he after a hot start to the season, he's kind of been struggling a little bit, and I figured it definitely has something to do with the fact that both of their countries failed to qualify for the World Cup, and both of them are dealing with some pretty serious confidence issues right now.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Dortmund's struggles domestically recently, but they've struggled in the Champions League all year, Nate. And what could you attribute this to? Because they're at the bottom of their, albeit they were in the group of death fairly in this year's Champions League, in a group with Real Madrid and Tottenham, who have been on fire this year, both in the Premier League and in Champions League. They're at the bottom of that table with Cypriot team Apoel, who is actually no slouch either, who made it all the way to the Champions League semifinals a few years back. So, again, where do Dortmund's struggles stem from in European competition?
I think it's defensively. But when I saw that we drew into this group of death, I thought, it'll be tough. But Tottenham, they these last couple of years they've really struggled in big games. And we were in the same group as Real Madrid last year, and that clearly was an issue. We were able to win the group, so I wasn't too worried. And even after the first match against Tottenham, where we lost 3-1 at home, lost 3-1 at Wembley, I was still like, you know what? We'll see what happens. But now I am completely hitting the panic button. I actually went ahead and followed the Europa League account on Twitter because I'm like, you know what? We're probably going to be in the Europa League, which sucks because the Europa League is for loser teams like Arsenal.
Well, we'll see you there, Nate. We'll see you there. Hopefully in the final, Arsenal Dortmund Europa League final could definitely be a potential.
That would be an absolute nightmare.
It would for the confidence of fans, but it's a trophy nonetheless. A trophy that has ensured Manchester United entry into the Champions League this year and their ensured success.
I remember when I was in elementary school and I got participation trophies.
Oh my gosh. So moving on the other side of the Champions League, we had, and we alluded to it earlier, we had Real Madrid play Tottenham at the Bernabeu in Madrid, and Tottenham got a huge result, Nate. It was very, very big for them to go to the Bernabeu and draw Real Madrid 1-1. What did you see from that match?
I saw a very confident Tottenham team, and I saw a very confident Harry Kane, who, I don't know, future Real Madrid striker Harry Kane. We'll see about that, but I think we can finally put to rest two myths. A, that Tottenham does not win big matches, and that B, Tottenham, there's this like Wembley hex, because at the start of the year they struggled at Wembley, but they've been absolutely on fire at Wembley, the Champions League, and back in the Premier League. But Tottenham, they are looking like they're going to get through, and I wouldn't go so far as to call them Champions League contenders yet. You still have to get through, and then it depends on who you draw in the knockout stage.
And especially since they haven't had continuous success in the Champions League in the past as well.
Yes, but right now it's Tottenham fans got to be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, and as an Arsenal fan, that it doesn't feel good to see Tottenham having all this kind of success while spending a comparable amount of money to Arsenal. Arsenal is, proved to be frugal in the past. And Tottenham, you never hear about Tottenham making the big money splash decisions. And players like Harry Kane and Dele Alli are all homegrown. And they've developed these superstar players. So that's a testament to their youth development program, that they've created a team that can go away to Real Madrid and, get a result. And I mentioned Arsenal. So Arsenal this past week, barely won against Red Star Belgrade in Serbia. It was a late Giroud goal bailing Arsenal out, seemingly as always, with an incredible, very, very lucky volley kind of goal that was in like the 85th minute. So this begs the question, since Arsenal has dominated Tottenham for the past 2 decades in amount of titles, in trophies, in head-to-heads again in the season, in recent years we've seen the tide really turn in this rivalry. Nate, do you think that Tottenham has overtaken Arsenal for good?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that last season was the first year since 1996 that the so-called St. Tottenham's Day was canceled, and St. Tottenham's Day is the day in the Premier League season where Arsenal is guaranteed to finish above Tottenham in the standings. And last year, for the first time in over 20 years, St. Tottenham's Day was canceled. And I think that it's clear that Tottenham has overtaken Arsenal as the team in North London. When you look at Tottenham over the last 2 years has more points than anyone in the Premier League. They're looking really good in the Champions League right now. Meanwhile, Arsenal is, I wouldn't say struggling in the Europa League, but I don't think Arsenal wants to be in the Europa League. Like, I don't think they want to be there at all. Meanwhile, Tottenham is partying it up in Madrid in the Champions League.
Yes. Sad to say as an Arsenal fan that this gap has, the tide has turned in this way, but well-deserved by Tottenham. They really have developed a fantastic club team over there. So, moving on, we saw Manchester City play Napoli in the Champions League, and these are two teams that have been destroying their respective domestic leagues, with Napoli doing comparable performances relative to Man City in Serie A, just dismantling teams left and right, with Dries Mertens and Callejon just going in and scoring goal after goal after goal. So everyone is expecting this game to be a goal fest. Wasn't necessarily a goal fest, but it was a very evenly matched contest, wouldn't you say, Nate?
Yeah, I would say that Manchester City was the better team in the first half, and Napoli was the better team in the second half, and it was a result that I think we all expected. It wasn't a Manchester City win, but I don't think that Napoli has any reason to, has anything to, hold their heads down about. They looked really good in the second half, and they came pretty close to tying it a couple times. But I think that I talked about it earlier, how I think Manchester City is definitely a Champions League contender, and how Kevin De Bruyne is a top 5 player in the world. I think Manchester City, I would say that the big boys right now in Europe are the two Spanish clubs, PSG, and I think that you could put Manchester City right in there at number 4 as the 4th best team in Europe right now.
Wow, that's a bold decision for a team that was in the Champions League semifinals last year, but has never been pushed to the final stages of the competition. So, similarly, Chelsea played Roma in the Champions League, and a British team versus an Italian team over this past Champions League cycle, and what a game. 3-3. Some defensive issues maybe, however, just two powerhouse teams going at it.
Yeah, no, this was a great match, and I think that Chelsea, you're obviously, it was a good match, but I think that you cannot be happy with conceding 3 goals at home. As good as Roma is, this is Chelsea's defensive issues are something that Antonio Conte needs to take a look at and be like, because some of those goals that they gave up were some pretty basic defensive mistakes. So I think that Chelsea, I wouldn't say they're a Champions League contender. I think they'll get out of the group, but I could see them getting knocked out in the round of 16.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. And another team that looks like they'll be advancing out of their group, but I could see losing very early on in the knockout stages, is Liverpool, who completely dismantled Maribor. And I believe we looked it up, and they're from Slovenia. They're a Slovenian team, and Liverpool won by a score of 7-0, the largest margin of victory in a Champions League game in history. So we mentioned earlier that Liverpool, more recently over the weekend, got dismantled by Tottenham immediately after completely destroying Maribor. So that it's a very streaky side, like a side that can bang in goals with the rest of them, but also can concede goals with the rest of them. And they stand somewhere in mid-table in the Premier League, which is definitely, with that kind of roster and keeping Philip Coutinho and not letting him walk, you would expect them to be much higher. And with this streakiness and lack of consistent results, Nate, is this Jurgen Klopp's last year in Liverpool?
That's a really good question. A question that I really don't have an answer to, but I think I said it earlier that if they don't finish top 4, then some serious questions need to be asked of Jurgen Klopp, because I mean, I've harped on it a couple of times. Just defensively, they make some of the stupidest mistakes. It is just absolutely terrible. Some of the defensive mistakes that they make, and it's not like Jurgen Klopp can, okay, this guy makes a mistake, and okay, I'm going to take him out, because the backups that they have defensively aren't any good either. Like, there's really nothing that they can do, and I'm not really sure what Jurgen Klopp is doing in training. Like, do they practice defense, or is it all just, let's just try and score as many goals as possible, and if we give up 4 goals, we're going to have to score 5 goals, because it seems to me like that's what Liverpool's kind of mantra is right now.
In the league as competitive as the Premier League, I think managers such as Conte and Wenger move before Klopp does.
So you're saying Wenger out before Klopp out. Do you realize that Wenger is like the ever constant of the universe at Arsenal? Like, we will all be gone, and Wenger will still, for some reason, be there. It's just the impenetrable fact of reality that Arsene Wenger will not leave Arsenal. Wenger out. I want him gone. Get him out of there. Europa League is not where we belong. We need to be going into the Bernabeu, getting results, and it's a mess. So on that somber note, that concludes this segment. Good job, Nate. We'll let you rest a little bit. That was a lot of recapping. A lot of games were watched. A lot of studying was not done because of how many games you watched over the week. So
that's a joke, Mom, by the way. I did study also.
So when we come back, we're going to take a look at the National Basketball Association, NBA. The NBA season has gotten started. NBA tip-off was last week. We saw Cavs versus Celtics and Warriors versus Rockets, as well as other very entertaining games. So stick around, and we'll be right back.
Nobody pray for me. It been a day for me. Yeah. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down.
Welcome back to the Comeback Kid, everyone. So when we were last with you, we alluded to the fact that we will be covering the NBA right now. Our first NBA segment of the year, guys. The basketball season is underway. And last week we saw NBA tip-off occur, which was the opening slew of games in the NBA, which included Cavs, Celtics, and Warriors, Rockets. Cavs, Celtics. What a game for many reasons. So many storylines. Kyrie Irving coming back to Cleveland after the fallout with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. We also saw a Cavs team which has a lot of former Celtics players, and the two teams in many ways just kind of like combined. And to me, these teams are clearly rivals, but a lot of these players are very familiar with each other. A lot of them are friends since they played with each other, and we really saw that unity come out when Gordon Hayward, sadly, in the first opening minutes of the game, had one of the most gruesome injuries I have ever seen on a basketball court, with his leg being completely twisted. I believe it is an ankle fracture that is going to have him out for. Doctors are saying the entire season, which is a big blow for the Celtics, not only just ability-wise, but morality-wise, to lose one of your star players, a big offseason acquisition, in the opening minutes of the season. And we've seen the Celtics in following games not get results, most likely due to a hangover effect of this Gordon Hayward injury. What Matt, so you've seen the injury, and do you have any choice words for the producers in the truck in watching that game to flash to the specific camera angle that just showed his leg completely construed?
It's nauseating. You don't need to show that on live television. I think it's a big blow, obviously, to the Celtics. I mean, they went out this offseason and said we want this guy. I mean, Hayward already had a repertoire with a coach, I think back from his college days.
Yes, at Butler, yeah.
Yeah, so they went out and they said we wanted this guy because they wanted to put to rest the notion that the Cavaliers are an Eastern Conference lock every year. And you know what? Maybe I would have believed it for a minute, having Hayward on that team with Irving. Obviously, 5 minutes into this guy's max contract with the Celtics, he's out. And you can't really blame him. I mean, you break a leg, and there's nothing you can really do about that. But what's happened is now you have to give a substantial amount of minutes to Jason Tatum, who this whole summer has been told that he's going to kind of learn the system. But now he is the system. So I think a lot has changed, within the last, 72 hours or whatever it's been. And I think that it might be a little rough going for the Celtics for a little while.
Yeah, I definitely would say so. I think the Celtics are not nearly the title contenders that they were now that Gordon Hayward is out, and especially with the decline in morality that this kind of injury has had on this team. And you mentioned Jason Tatum, super high draft pick, and you would expect players like Jason Tatum to come into the NBA and tear it up. The Celtics over the past few years have used a long-term strategy when they completely unloaded players like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Nets and gotten a bunch of their future draft picks. So we see a Celtics team that is consistently in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference with picks in the first with a top 5 pick every year. And it would be a shame if the Celtics were to not give the opportunities to these high draft picks, because they produce in college, and players like Jason Tatum, especially special talents, I believe can, if he comes out and performs and just tears up the NBA, we're going to be not forgetting about Gordon Hayward, but Gordon Hayward is not going to be nearly as missed ability-wise on this team. So Celtics off to a rough start. On the other side of the coin, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and a revitalized Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose in the preseason was getting a lot of hype for this being a revenge year for him, potentially being a year that he revitalized his career playing with the King. We've seen other older players like Richard Jefferson come in and actually completely revitalize his career because he's able to play with LeBron and learn from him. And he's done fairly well the first few games, and the Cavs are really off to a hot start. So kind of two opposite sides of the coin when we're talking about the Cavs versus the Celtics in regards to the trajectory that each team has been on in the start of the year. So that was a very interesting game to watch. The Cavs were able to hold off the Celtics to win that game. No one would really expect the Celtics to win a game like that when you have Gordon Hayward going down in the very beginning, kind of setting the tone for the entire game. But it's going to be, I almost said an interesting Eastern Conference, but I really don't think it's going to be all that interesting because we saw so many players being traded to the West, and now we're seeing a completely reloaded Western Conference with teams such as the Houston Rockets, which on opening night beat the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors thought that they had the Rockets beat with a Kevin Durant buzzer beater, but that shot was since waved off by milliseconds. The ball was nearly on his fingertips when the buzzer went off, and Warriors thought they had it won, but then Houston, with the help of James Harden, and it's not just James Harden's team anymore. They added Chris Paul, proven veteran presence who definitely knows how to win, and maybe the winning mentality will be able to actually translate into more results that he couldn't get as a Los Angeles Clipper.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Chris Paul knows how to win. He's never made it past the second round of the playoffs, so I wouldn't say that he knows how to win. But I think that was not that. As much as I will hate on Chris Paul, I would say that wasn't his failures in Los Angeles for the Clippers were not completely on him. He seemed to me like there were a lot of times where he was delivering and the people around him weren't. But I think this is a huge win for Houston, even though it is the first game of the year. The fact that you were able to go to Golden State and get a win, be it on a basket that was waved off, I feel like that's got to be a huge confidence booster. And I know, Ben, you must have been going crazy when they waved off that KD bucket.
I was terrified when that went in. I thought the game was over. I thought that the Warriors had it won, and the Warriors were going to be 1-0, and it's just the beginning of the same script we've seen every year. Some background: I am a very strong Cleveland Cavaliers fan. I used to live in Cleveland for a few years, so LeBron's my guy, and the Cavaliers are my team. So I do not like the Warriors, and this comes in tandem with my distaste for the San Francisco Giants, and just Bay Area sports in general is gives me a very sour taste in my mouth. So I was very, I was mortified when I saw that shot go in, even though Kevin Durant, I drafted him on my fantasy team. Somewhat hypocritical in that way, but my team name is KD's Snake City, for the reason that he is a snake and he slithered his way out of Oklahoma City. But yes, what a performance by the Rockets. And not just the Rockets, but we also saw the Minnesota Timberwolves barely beat out another very strong team in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the other night. We saw Carmelo Anthony seemingly hitting a game-winning three-point shot in the last seconds of the game, only to have Andrew Wiggins hit a game-winning buzzer-beater three in Oklahoma City to win the game. And it was, I think, a testament to the kind of experiment that's going on in Minnesota right now, just kind of completely reshaping that team with a lot of proven players from a lot of different teams, such as Jeff Teague, Jimmy Butler. You already had to go in tandem with the players they already had, such as Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. And this is really a testament to how strong the West is, both of these games, because these teams were just, it was punch after punch and going back and forth, and just the quality of teams in the Western Conference is just going to make for very fun basketball to watch throughout the year. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I would definitely have to agree on that. I think in the future we'll be talking more about basketball, but I think we should switch from bagging on Kevin Durant to bagging onto another sports franchise, wouldn't you say?
Yes, so very, very nicely put, Matt. Thank you. So we're going to transition now to one of our favorite segments. It's called Ride the Bus. Every week we select a person related to the sports world to ride the bus. And the meaning of ride the bus is in baseball, when a player is sent down to the minor leagues, they now go from flying around in nice planes to literally riding the bus. So this week we're gonna stay in the realm of baseball. This week, if you are a Yankee fan listening, you are riding the bus. You yourself, yes, you are riding the bus this week. And Matt, would you like to enlighten us why our certain viewers are riding the bus?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not all of y'all, but yeah, it's all of y'all. So what y'all did is, during the ALCS, when Houston came to town to play our national pastime, and maybe to distract us from other things, you were chanting Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey. What is that? We're promoting a natural disaster to a team that's just trying to rally around something, to a city that's trying to rally around something. And you just have to go out and say that. You guys deserve the L. New York Yankees fans,
ride the bus. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan, so I'll find any reason to hate on the Yankees. And I remember way back when in 2004 when after A-Rod got called out for slapping the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's hand, the Yankee fans were throwing beers and baseballs and all kinds of objects onto the field. So it's a different type of Yankee fan now, but they're still the same, unclassy jerks, that they've always been.
Well, many say the golden rule in baseball is when God created heaven and earth, he also created baseball fans that hate the Yankees. If you are a baseball fan, it is required that you hate the Yankees and this just proves why. The fan base is just so completely morally distasteful to the point where you have made the general populace of America, who was somewhat actually kind of rallying around the Yankees for the first time in a long time, because this team was a fun team to watch. You had a moral leader like Aaron Judge, addressing the media in a very formal and respectful way. And then you as a fan base had to go and ruin all of that and completely put the Yankees back into the mold that we have known for decades. So you know what? Actually, thank you, Yankees fans. You've brought me to hate you once again with a burning passion. I respect that. So that brings our episode to an end today. So moving forward, what we like to do every week is to allude to what each of us will be watching this week in the world of sports. So, Nate, what will you be watching this week?
I will be watching the MLS playoffs, and particularly a matchup between Atlanta and Columbus on Thursday night. Atlanta's going to be at home. Who knows? It could be 70,000 people there, like there were at the match yesterday, taking on Columbus, a city that, could lose their MLS team in a few years. So, a city that could really use an MLS Cup. Matt, what will you be watching?
I will be watching the Ducks and Flyers tomorrow night. They're closing out a home-and-home series, not even 10 games into the season. There should be an exciting game, not just for the players that have been there, but Ryan Getzlaf should be back. Hampus Lindholm should be back. I really think the Ducks have a chance in this one. But I think we're missing something pretty significant. What are you watching, Ben?
I will be watching, the World Series of Baseball. This is it's a bittersweet time of the year for me. You get to watch some of the best players and best teams go head-to-head against each other in very high-leverage situations. However, it also means it's the end of the baseball season, which is, somewhat sad. And so it's gonna be a cold, long, dark winter where all we have is Premier League and different sports such as that.
Probably won't be that cold and dark. It's going to be 103 out today. It's supposed to be the fall.
Yes, so in San Diego, it is going to be 103 degrees today. Very hot. So that is it for us today at The Comeback Kid. Matt and I need to get to class as always. Check us out at USD Comeback on Twitter and Facebook, or search The Comeback Kid and give us a listen on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/ComebackKidUSD. And for those of you listening on Facebook, Twitter, or SoundCloud, we broadcast live every single week at 9 a.m. on the USD radio station, which can be found on the TuneIn Radio app. TuneIn is available on both Apple and Android app stores. Once you download it, just search USD Radio, favor that page, and you'll have access to USD Radio wherever you go. And also, we mentioned it at the top of the show. If you guys have any topic suggestions, please feel free to let us know via tweet, text. You guys know us, so give us any topic suggestions, and we would love to address any of those. So that's it from us. Thank you guys for watching, and we will be back next week. Take care, guys.